everybody, thanks for tuning into this video. My name's Paul and I am a volunteer with Worship Catalyst out here in Tucson, Arizona, where I lead worship. I've been leading worship for about 20 years, so I'm excited to share maybe some of that experience with you today and answer a question that you might have. What I want to talk about in this video specifically is, what do you do when you hit a section of a song and your worship leader looks at you, or if you're the worship leader, you think, wow, I just can't strum like crazy through this part of the song. It needs to have a different feel. How do I add a different color maybe to this part of the song? And one of the ways that you can do that is to finger pick, or to use a pick, but to do single notes during those slower, more sedate parts of a song. But how in the world do you do that? How do you decide what to do, what strings to pick? Well, it's actually really pretty simple. The guys that do it well aren't really thinking a whole lot about it. They've just figured out how to do it without thinking. One of the best things you can do, let's say you have a song that's in G. So you're playing this G chord that Austin showed you on one of the other videos. And you've been strumming along in this song. But then it hits that part where it's just a little bit too much. What can you do to change that? Well, you can take your pick and you can start on the root note. That would be the biggest string, which is the G, being played with your middle finger of your left hand. And you can just pluck those strings straight down, one at a time, in a rhythm, maybe quarter notes, maybe eighth notes, but just, and then let it ring. And then change the chord, maybe to this C. Just do the top four strings of whatever chord it is that you're going to play. Back to the G. Real simple. Don't make it any harder than that. Don't take your pick out of the strings. You actually keep it in the strings and just bring it straight down so that it plucks the string and goes right to the next one. That way you don't have to wonder where you are or where you're going to go next. You can just play that chord. Another chord in that same sequence could be a D, and in that case you would play all four strings of the chord. And suddenly you've created a nice little change of color to that song. Now that may not be enough. You may want to think about having another pattern. You may want to use your actual fingers to finger pick. Maybe it needs to be a little softer. Maybe it's during a prayer or over a baptism, and the pastor looks at you and says, and you're like, well, now you would know what to do. One thing I like to do is I like to take my pinky and I like to anchor it right there below the bridge of the guitar so that my hand is always in the same place and I don't have to wonder where it is. Some people use their pinky, so you could certainly do it that way, but for me, I like to have this set point so that my fingers are kind of always in the same position. And I would do what I call plucking the chord, and then I would do 2 strings down and 2 strings up. This is the pattern I've used for a long, long time, and it generally works in all cases. So for this G that I was just playing before, I would be sure that with my thumb I always pluck the root, the lowest note in the chord, and then I try to get a couple of the high strings with at least 2 fingers and maybe 3. So I start out by plucking the full chord that I'm going to pluck. And since I'm not using a pick, it already has, unless you have super long, crazy fingernails, it already has a softer tone to it, a softer feel to it, a different color than if you're strumming. So I would pluck that, then I'd go down with the thumb, and then up like this. So 2 low notes, 2 high notes, down 2, up 2, and I would do that over and over. So it just creates this nice little pattern, and you don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to be able to repeat it. And then when you change chords to the C, you just have to be sure you're starting on the root of the C. You don't want to play this note. You want to play the C. Back to the G. So I'm keeping that pinky there so that these fingers are anchored on these top 2 strings, and then these low strings I'm just hitting with the thumb to create a full chord, and then hit that pattern. You don't have to pluck the chord every time if you want to have something different. Then with the D, it's the same thing. You just get a little tighter formation, but I'm always hitting the root with my thumb. So you can practice that. Anchoring your hand, this is actually what I would call the claw. And using your thumb on the bass and at least two other fingers on the high strings. And the next time the pastor looks over at you during the offering or baptism or prayer and says, you'll know exactly what to do. Just grab your claw, hitch it to the guitar, and start playing that pattern. I hope that helps you. There's lots of other videos that you can be looking at that are training videos, also for other instruments, other guitars, so be sure and check those out, and we'll see you in the next one.